Oh, what's up, everybody? I'm back. Hey, do me a favor. Raise your hand if you have a good group of friends. Like you love your friends, you love them, you appreciate them, you care for them, you die for them. Like that's the kind. I like that. If you don't have your hand up, you need some new friends because that's a little sad. Now here's the thing. Did you know there's lots of people in this room, lots of different friend groups, but every single friend group has the same type of friends in their groups. Did you know this? Okay, I'm going to list off a couple and tell me if you have any of these friends inside of the friend groups that you have. Every single friend group has the funny friend. The funny friend, like this is the friend that you just put a quarter in them and they go for 3 hours nonstop. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Half the stuff that they say is inappropriate, but you forgive them because they're your funny friend. They're your funny friend and you forgive them. Every friend group, they have the rich friend. You know the rich friend. Like their house is the one that you always go to because they have all the good stuff. They have the never-ending snack bowl that's always full. There's food there all the time. When you go to lunch with your rich friend, like you kind of do this thing, because don't tell me you don't, because I do this too. You kind of like pat your pockets as if you're going to pay. You're not going to pay, you liar. You're with your rich friend. You know that they were going to pay. Right? So every friend group, they have the rich friend. Every friend group has, like you need this one. You need a good texting friend. Like you need the one that you just send memes back and forth to each other. You know what I'm talking about? Like you don't communicate through regular conversation. You communicate by sending back and forth memes. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this to me. Maybe your parents do this to you, but it ticks me off is you never respond back to me with this. Okay. Never, no. I need emotion. I need emojis. I need memes. I need some pictures with the way that I communicate. You need a good texting friend. Every friend group has this friend. It's the low maintenance friend. The low maintenance friend. This is the friend that will text you, say, hey, can I come over? And you say, yeah. And they're like, good, I'm already in your driveway. And then when they come into your house, you could put on a movie and you don't have to say a single word for hours. You just like to be around them. They don't care if they didn't get invited to the party. They're your low maintenance friend. Me, super high maintenance. I care deeply, okay? And so you have your low maintenance friend. And you always have this in your group too, the always down friend. And you need this friend. It's that friend that if you were to call them up right now and you say, dude, let's drive to the Grand Canyon tonight. And they'd be like, down, let's go. They don't have a job, they don't have money, but they're always down. Always down. And every friend group, they have this friend. You have the kind of annoying, but we like you sometimes friend. Now, hold up. If you're going, we don't have that friend. Guess what? I hate to break it to you. You're that friend. We don't have that friend. No, you're that friend. I'm sorry. I hate to break that to you. Now, am I doing pretty good so far in all these friend groups? Last one. Every friend group has this one. It's the flaky friend. You know what I'm talking about? Like the friend that always tells you, yeah, I'll be there, and then they don't show up. Or, yeah, I'll be there, but like 10 minutes before they say, oh, I can't make it. They always flake on you in the last minute. See, I had this friend named in high school. His name was Jeff, and he was my flaky friend. And when I say flaky, I mean like super flaky friend. And we grew up, we played baseball on the high school team, and we became friends over time. And Jeff knew nothing of church, knew nothing of Jesus, had nothing. He thought I was the weird dude that went to church and spent my time doing all these weird things on Sundays and going to summer camp and doing all that stuff. But we became friends over the years as we were playing baseball together, and we would talk about our faith, talk about church. He knew nothing about that, but I would always invite Jeff to come to our Sunday night service for high school, and every single week he would tell me that he would come. But he never did. He always flaked on me. It's almost like I could count it down every Sunday night at 5:50 that I could go 3, 2, 1, cue text from Jeff, and then boom, it would be right there, and it'd be like, hey, dude, I can't come tonight. Hey, I got busy. Hey, I got chores. Hey, I got to do homework. He would always flake on me. There was always some sort of excuse. And so one night we were having this big event at our church, and it was like a neon blacklight dance party, and there was going to be like blacklight dodgeball, neon dodgeball, and I told him, Jeff, You flake on everything. I want you to come so bad. You need to come. Like, there's gonna be blacklight dodgeball. There's gonna be free food. There's gonna be cute girls. I was like trying to throw everything out there, right? Like just to get him to come and come check out this experience, because that's how much I loved it. That's how much I knew he needed Jesus. I'm like, it would be so much fun. It would mean so much to me if you did not flake out on this one. Will you just come and check it out? Come with me. And he said, okay, fine. I promise on our friendship that I will be there. And I said, good, because our friendship means a lot. So it's the night of the event. I'm excited because Jeff promised on our friendship that he was going to come, and 30 minutes before I'm at the church, I'm helping set up. I'm all decked out and on my neon stuff, right? And I'm excited, and then I get this text from Jeff. And he said, hey, dude, I'm sorry I can't make it. I got a lot of homework tonight. And I was with my friend Kevin, because we've been bugging him and inviting him and trying to get him to come for for it felt like years, this is months, weeks, days, whatever. But we've been trying every time to get him to come, and I don't even say anything. I just show Kevin the text, and we don't even say anything to each other. We just kind of nod, because we knew what we were going to do. We had to kidnap Jeff. We did. So we hop in my truck. I'm already decked out. I'm in my neon shorts. I got my headband. I got neon face paint all over me. I got my fanny pack. I'm ready to go, right? Like, let's go. So I hop in my truck. We drive over to Jeff's house. We pull up to his house. We get out of the truck. His door is always unlocked because he's the rich friend. His house always has people over, right? So his parents knew. So we go in, we kind of like kick open the door without even knocking. His parents are in the front room. They didn't know that we were coming. They let out a big scream. Ah! They thought they were being broke into. They're like, oh, it's just Justin and Kevin. Jeff's upstairs. And we're like, okay, we're going upstairs. And this is right when the movie 300 came out. So I was like Sparta kicking everything, right? Like, this is Sparta. And so I go up to Jeff's room, and I Sparta kick open his door, and Jeff is just sitting on his bed playing video games. And we didn't say nothing. We didn't say anything. We didn't do anything. You just this is Jeff. He's sitting, kick open the door, and Jeff goes, and we didn't say a word. And this is all Jeff did. He goes, I guess I'm going, right? I'm like, yes, you are going. And so we brought stuff with him. We brought him to church. And he came with us that night. And it was awesome. And it was a good moment. And here's the thing. Friends, they're such a big deal, right? Like, when you think about the people that you love the most or to spend time with the most, the friends are such a big deal. Like, those that you hang out with the most, you tend to become more and more like them. Right? I tell my students all the time, is show me who you hang out with, I will show you your future. Because they say who you spend, the 5 people you spend the most time with is who you become most like. Because you begin to take on their characteristics of those of people who you hang around. And those who you hang around, they're so important and they influence you in some mighty ways. But here's the deal, you influence them also. Not only do they influence you, but you have the opportunity to influence them as well. And as we dive into this story that we're continuing for this week, we get to see what a one-on-one relationship, an intentional relationship, how that could change the trajectory of someone's life. So we've been talking about Elijah, and we see that, what he's done this with Elisha. And he's literally obedient to God. He seeks after God, and he seeks after one person to put his arm around and bring alongside him and to invite him into his life and to walk with him. And God begins to change everything. And so we're going to pick up in 1 Kings 19, verse 19. It's going to be up on the screen if you want to follow along, but this is what it says. So in verse 19, so Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. Not Snapchat. That's what I thought when I first read it. Okay, it's not Snapchat. Shaphat. And he was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and that he himself was driving the 12th pair. So Elijah, in this context, Elijah, he was the rich friend, right? He was rich. He was flexing on everybody because he had all this animal. He had all this land. He had all these things. And you could kind of see it because why he was that way, because he was in the field himself. He was driven. He was doing all the things. It seemed like he liked getting his hands dirty. And in all honesty, that's why we have problems sometimes going out and reaching out to someone, because when it seems like they're doing good, or it seems like they have everything together, or it seems like that they're enjoying their life, we don't want to reach out to them or bug them because we feel like we're going to inconvenience them by inviting them to this thing or whatever we got. But we have no idea what God could do in them by just one invite, right? I have no idea. Continuing on, it said Elijah went up to him and he threw his cloak around him. So this is like Elijah saying, hey, Pikachu, I choose you, right? Like you're coming with me. You're going to come alongside me. I'm going to put my arm around you, take you underneath my wing, and I'm going to do life with you, come with you, walk alongside you, teach you, pray for you, and I'm going to be involved with you. This is what he is saying when he puts the cloak around him. And in verse 20, Elisha then left his oxen and he ran after Elijah. He says, let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elijah left him and went back, and he took his yoke of oxen and he slaughtered them and burned the plowing equipment and took the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Holy crap, that seems a little intense, doesn't it? Right? Could you imagine if someone says, hey, come with me, and you go home and kill all your pets, and then like you feed them to your friends, right? To say goodbye. Like that's what, like, whoa, pump the brakes. But if you think about it, like this is, it kind of shows you what God could do in the moment where you are putting your arm intentionally around somebody. So he goes back and he burns all his work stuff to make sure that he can't come back to the slice. So you might be looking at this going like, wow, that's really intense. But the thing is, we don't know. We don't know what could be on the other end of a conversation. We don't know what could be at the other end of an invite. We don't know what could be on the other end of us putting our arms around someone and walking with them, whether their life seems to be going great or whether it could be the worst that it's ever been. But here's the thing is that we have no idea what God could do if we were just to put our arm or cloak around them and invite them into what we have. See, here's the thing is we're not called to change people. We have zero power to change people. I don't have the power even to change myself. But we are called to be obedient to God. We are called to be obedient to show them the one who can change them. See, continuing, it says, then he set out to follow Elijah and become his servant. See, so we see here we have Elijah going out to find the one person that he's going to invest in. And Elisha's response is amazing. He leaves everything, burns all of his stuff to make sure that he doesn't go back, that he was dedicated immediately by one invite from this guy Elijah. He seemed that he had everything in order. He seemed like he had the perfect life. He had everything. He had land. He had riches. He had all the things, good family, all those things. But God decided to do something. And Elisha followed just because someone came on and said, hey, come with me. Walk with me. Let me show you. See, it's amazing when we choose to obey God in this area of our faith that it helps us find our purpose. Because here's something, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. It says, I find purpose when God sends me to reach others. That I find my purpose when I realize that God has called me and sent me to go out and reach others, to bring others into this relationship that I have with Jesus. See, if you've been a part of Christianity for any part of time, whether you grew up in the church or you're just still checking out, you probably heard of this really big word, evangelism, right? That we're actually called to go out and evangelize, to reach people who are far from God in hopes to bring them near to God. And most of us, when we think of this big churchy word evangelism, we think that we have to be the guy or girl up on the stage teaching, or we have to be the guy or the girl standing up in the middle of the quad holding up a Bible and preaching the gospel of Jesus to all the friends at school and all the whatever it is. But that's not, what if I told you that it's more than that? Yeah, those are some things that maybe you feel called to do that, and maybe that's how you do it. But what if I told you that it's a lot simpler but just as powerful? See, what if I told you that instead of trying to get as many people, what if you just focused on one for the rest of the year? We'll come back to that. See, but first, before we even talk about like going out and sharing our faith, I want to talk about why we don't. Like, what are the things that keep you from going out and sharing your faith with your friends or family? What keeps us from getting a little bit uncomfortable? And I fall into these two, and I think there's three. There's three big things that if we are honest with ourselves, that actually keep us from doing what Elijah does with Elisha. And the first one, I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. It's this word called complacency. And complacency is literally means that you're okay with status quo, meaning that you're okay with the things of just how they are. You don't want things to change. You're complacent with everything, that you like everything how it is. You don't want to mess everything up. And here is the reality, is that when you're in school, 5 days a week, every single day, you're around people who do not know who Jesus is. You have friends that you spend a lot of time with who do not know who Jesus is, who are dying eternally. We're surrounded by people who we say that we care about, who we say that we have friendships with, who do not know the love and grace of Jesus, but we're okay with it because we're numb to it. Because we're just complacent with just our friendships of where they are at. And we just kind of go about our daily lives. And here's the thing, students, if we're not careful, if we stay complacent, we will be more concerned. We'll spend more time worrying about finishing out the year strong more than where our best friends spend eternity. That we become complacent in our faith, that we don't want to step out. And I know that's strong, that comes on strong, and some of you are like, well, Justin, I liked you 15 minutes ago when you were drawing like Poopy Corky or whatever like that. Like go back to that guy. But here's the thing, this is the truth, is that we are surrounded. It's so important that we have people in our lives that we might even know our entire life, that you might have known for years, that are bound in their sin, and we know how to set them free, but we're not sharing it. That Jesus on his last days, his last words to us, it's called the Great Commission. The Great Command, and it's found in Matthew 28, and he says to go out into the world, to make disciples, to baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so many of us treat that as if it's the great suggestion, or the great if I'll get around to it one day, or if the opportunity presents itself. But that's not what Jesus has in mind. See, Elijah had done so much in this time before meeting Elijah. He could have been complacent, but he was obedient to God. And he went out to find Elisha, put his arm around him, and invited him in. See, the second thing that I think keeps us away from actually going out and doing what Elijah did and to reaching out to the one person, the second thing, I think it's comfort. I think we just love comfort. I don't know about you. I'm not going to lie to you. I love to be comfy. Do I wish I was in my comfy sweats right now? Yes, I do. Do I wish that I was in my Ugg slippers right now? Yes, I do. It's like walking on clouds. Like, I love to be comfy. I love my wife and I, we went on vacation to Palm Springs in the desert, and we were in a hotel, and every time I go to a hotel, she gets so embarrassed because, of course, I wear the hotel robe down to the breakfast. Of course I do. She gets embarrassed, and I just love it. It's so comfy. I love to be comfy. See, my ideal vacation is to be somewhere hot, sitting in something cool, right? That's my ideal of comfy. And we could be honest. Let's just be honest for a second. It could be uncomfortable to talk about Jesus. It could be uncomfortable to talk about your faith, to invite people to church, to bring up Jesus in conversations. It's uncomfortable to explain why you do certain things or why you don't do certain things because of your faith. And I was trying to figure out why. Why are we so uncomfortable with this? And I think I've narrowed it down to this because I fall into this as well, and maybe you do too. It's because we care more about what they think about us more than what Jesus wants to do in their life. That we care more about what our friends, our family think about us more than what Jesus wants to do in their life. That we would be willing to get uncomfortable to go try that new coffee shop, but we won't tell others about the life-changing Jesus. See, we care more about what people think about us. We care about our status. We care about our reputation. We don't want to be that guy, that girl, goody, whatever it is that, Jesus freak. I don't know what it is that you have in mind, but we care. But so let me ask you something. Can I ask you something? What if someone's eternity could change on the other side of a potentially awkward conversation? What if someone's eternity, where they spend eternity, could change on the other side of a potentially awkward conversation? What if your best friends can come to know and meet Jesus and begin to chase something that actually matters, to find a hope and a purpose for their life? But the one thing that is holding them back is a conversation that we are not willing to have. See, Elisha, he had it made. He was rich, he had a good family, he was comfy. But he was willing to get uncomfortable. He was willing to give it all up. He was willing to go chase after what God has called him to do, to be with Elijah. And I've noticed that it's when I'm uncomfortable, that's when God tends to show up the most. Because I'm dependent more on him than ever in those uncomfortable conversations, those uncomfortable situations. That's what I see Jesus move and work the most in my life, is when I'm uncomfortable. Another reason why I think that we struggle with this, why we struggle with sharing and coming alongside someone and inviting them into it, is the third thing. And this is the biggest one. I think it is for me. It's selfishness. So you have complacency, you have comfort, and I think this one is selfishness. I think selfishness keeps us from actually going out and bringing someone in to share our faith. And here's a question. It's the biggest one when it comes to our faith. Am I willing to give up my plan for his plan? That's a question that I think that we have to begin to look through. Am I willing to give up my plans for his plans? And here's the thing. This is a daily question. And guess what? I hate this question. Do you know why I hate this question? Because I love my plans. I really love my plans. The plans that I make. Guys, guess who everyone comes to when plans need to be made? Me. My plans. You know why? Because they're awesome. I make good plans. The plan that I have, the comfort, the plan, the stuff that I plan for me, it's awesome. I love my plans. It's really important for me for my plans to go and to go out. But here's the thing, and the tension is that my plans, they stem from my selfishness. Because they're my plans. I want to do whatever I want to do. And I'm very selfish, and my guess is that in a room this size, I'm not alone in this whole selfish thing. See, in your house, you may or may not have this. I'm guessing most of you do. You have your spot. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's your spot. It's like when you come home, everyone else in the house knows that this is your spot. It's your spot. It's where you go to relax. I have a spot in my house. It's in the living room. It's where we have an L-shaped couch. It's where the L meets. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's like right there where you put your feet up. That's my spot. My wife knows it's my spot. My son knows it's my spot. Even my cat knows that it's my spot. When dad comes home, the cat scampers away because he knows that's my spot. It's my favorite spot. And I remember this is how selfish I am. I had friends over at my house. I like to host people. My wife's a great host, and so I'm in the kitchen, and I'm making, food for everybody, getting drinks all together, and getting this whole great spread and this whole spread of dips, because my favorite food is any food you dip into another food, amen, right? Like, that's my favorite. And I have, I'm getting all this food together, and I walk into the room, and I see my friend Kevin. Freaking Kevin. He's in my spot. Kevin's in my spot. And I walk into the room with this tray of dips. And I'm like, freaking Kevin, what are you doing? He's like, I'm waiting for the food that you're giving to us. I'm like, freaking Kevin, you don't get no dips? Get out of my spot. You go sit in the corner. Don't even look at the dips. I'm a really good host. He was in my spot. 2 things you need to know about me. 1, I don't share food. And 2, you definitely don't share food if you are sitting in my spot, freaking Kevin. Okay? Like, we don't do that in my house. And here's the deal. I'm not as selfish as I used to be. Because as someone who's trying to follow Jesus, I'm learning from Jesus that about my selfishness and how I release my plans for his plans. That I release my plans for what Jesus has for me. And I'm also learning, and this is cool, is that when I surrender my plans for his plans, that Jesus supports and rewards it. See, in Matthew 6:33, it says this. He says, "But seek first the kingdom the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." So seek the kingdom of God, the ways of Jesus, that above all else, meaning above my agenda, and live righteously, meaning do the things that he's called you to do, the actions of being a disciple, and that he will give you everything that you need, not everything that you want. And this is what I'm learning. Now, what I'm also learning is that being a disciple of Jesus is losing my plans to his plans. And here's the thing. Here's what a lot of, and it comes to this whole thing of sharing your faith. Because I don't know if you do or not. I don't know how many conversations you have with friends or not. But here's something that I've learned, that I've seen as being a pastor for the last 10 years, working with high school students just like yourself. And even with grown-ups, even I've done this as well. Here's what a lot of Christians do. They believe in Jesus until following him messes with their plans. They believe in Jesus. They know all the right things to say. They know all the right things to do. They'll say that they'll follow him, but then the moment that they come to something that Jesus calls them to do and it messes up their plans, they back away. And then they choose their own way, and then they act surprised when that way doesn't work out. It doesn't lead to blessing, and it instead slams them into pain. See, most of the pain and heartache that I've noticed that is when people, that I always hear about, is when it always points back to this. People choose their way over Jesus' way. If you really look at the heart of people's pain and the things that they've chosen for themselves, is usually when they chose to be selfish, to do whatever they wanted to do, rather than what Jesus has called them to do. And lots of the pain that we experience, if we're being honest, stems from us choosing not to live a life of contrast because we don't understand that following Jesus is actually way more worth it. See, when you follow Jesus, truly follow Jesus, people will begin to notice. People will notice that your life is different because it is literally impossible to truly know who Jesus is and remain the same person. Literally impossible to really know Jesus and remain the same person, meaning that if you keep on doing the same things over and over and over again, I have to ask you, do you really know Jesus? Because if you really do know him and you're following him and you're chasing and pursuing and knowing and growing and reading his word and reading his commands and beginning to do those things, you begin to change. And people begin to notice and people will begin to ask you about your faith. So there's these three things. And I've fallen into every single one of them. It's that you're complacent. That's why you don't share your faith. You really just don't care. You're okay with things the way that they are. You're either just too comfortable. The thought of literally having a potential awkward conversation paralyzes you from even sharing your faith. Or the third one is that you, at our core, we are just selfish. We just like doing what we like doing more than what Jesus actually commands us to do. And I fall into all those, even as a pastor. And but when we read this passage about Elijah and Elisha, we see how intentional Elijah is with Elisha. We see this intentionality. He didn't know what God was going to do, and we're going to continue on in that story. But he was just obedient to God. And he let God work on Elisha. See, we're not called to change anyone. Again, we can't. We don't have that power. But we are called to tell someone about the one who can. See, Elisha, he came next to Elisha and he put his arm around him. He walked with him through the process. And guess what, students? We're called to do the same thing. We're called to go out and reach a friend, to go out and called to reach and come alongside someone and do the same thing. Why? Because I find purpose when God sends me to reach others. I find my purpose when I realize that God sends me to reach others. See, you have zero idea what God could do through one intentional conversation. You don't have any idea what God could do through one invitation. You have no idea what God could do through one conversation, one invite. Because God could do some amazing things. That when we follow through on what Jesus commands us, we will see him work through us in ways we never thought he ever would. So my friend Jeff went with us to work, or to church that night. After we kidnapped him, kicked down his door, right? He came with us, and he had a good time. He had a great time. And here's the thing. There was no big decision that night. He wasn't saved that night. There was no miracle that night. Nothing really changed that night. He enjoyed it. And he kind of had this conversation afterwards. He's saying, wow, if it means that much to you that you guys would come and kick down my door and kidnap me, it must be something that's really important. And so here's the thing. Nothing happened that night, but Jeff, we invited him back. And he came back. And then next week he came back. And he started to come a little bit more. And then we invited him to summer camp, much like this one. And it was at that summer camp that my friend Jeff made a decision to follow Jesus. He flipped that switch. And he gave his life to Jesus. All because his crazy friend in neon short shorts and neon face paint decided to kick down his door and kidnap him. Because he loved him and he wanted to be like Jesus and said, hey, how Jesus invited his disciples, hey, just come and see. Just come and see. It's just like what Elijah did with Elisha. So when it comes to finding your purpose, we know that one of your purposes gets fulfilled when you go out and you reach someone else. When you go out and you share your faith. When you go out and have a potentially awkward conversation. And my question to you is this. Who's your Elisha? Who's your one? Who's that one person that you wrote down when the tiles went by? That one person who might be far from God that you would like to see come near to God. That one person who you know needs Jesus, but you have not yet had that conversation yet because you've either been afraid or nervous or comfortable or complacent. Who's that one? Who's that one person? What's their name? On the count of 3, I want you to say that name out loud. Because there's something about, you wrote it down, but there's also something about saying it out loud that now it's going to keep you accountable. Who's that person? So on the count of 3, I want you to write down the person that you wrote down. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You said it. What would happen if for the rest of this year they became your one? Not trying to go out and reach everybody, but what if they just became the one person that you were intentional with? That's your Elisha. The one person that you came, whoever God placed on your mind, on your heart, that you came alongside and put your arm around. And you started to open up about your faith. You started to talk about life. You literally invaded their life. Listen, not a project. They're not someone to fix. But someone you are intentionally in relationship with, praying for, asking them, how can I pray for you? Inviting them to your church, inviting them back to your group, inviting them into your life, inviting them over just to be intentional with what were to happen. What were to happen if God were to grab a hold of their heart? Because of one person's invite, because of one person's conversation that they're willing to have and get a little uncomfortable. See, our hope is that to help you see your role is to invest in others and how your story is actually a part of God's bigger story of reaching people and invite them to be a part of that as well. Watch what God does when we decide to obey him in this one area. You want to see God move? You want to see God move this year? Not only in your life, but in someone else's life, obey him in this area. So who's your one? Who's your one person this year?